My name is Garrett Wilson, 68 years old, lying in my hospital bed when the phone rang. It was Amanda, my daughter, calling after more than 3 months of silence. Her voice buzzed with excitement. She was getting married tomorrow to Jackson. By the way, she said she had sold my house and my car while I was in the hospital. I replied calmly, "Okay, but you left out one thing." She paused, confused. "What do you mean?" And I laughed out loud because the house she sold was actually not hers to sell. If you are watching this right now, let me know where you are viewing from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had a family member who tried to take advantage of you. I still remember the days when Amanda was the light of my life. After my wife Margaret passed away from breast cancer, when Amanda was only 7 years old, it was just the two of us against the world. I had built a successful real estate business in our small town of Millfield, but I scaled back significantly to be there for my daughter. Those early years were tough, but we formed a bond that I thought would last forever. Every Saturday morning we would make pancakes together. Amanda would stand on a little stool next to me at the counter, her small hands covered in flour as she helped mix the batter. "More blueberries, Daddy," she would always say, and I could never say no to those big brown eyes that looked so much like her mother's. I taught Amanda to ride a bike in our driveway, running alongside her until she found her balance. I attended every school play sitting front row center, with my video camera capturing each moment for posterity. Every time she looked out from the stage, I made sure she could see me smiling back at her. Our fishing trips to Lake Millfield became a sacred weekly ritual. We would pack sandwiches and sodas at dawn, then spend hours by the water. Amanda caught her first fish when she was 9, a small bass that she insisted we release. "He has a family waiting for him, Dad," she said, with such conviction that I couldn't argue. Through elementary and high school, Amanda was the model daughter. Straight A student, kind to everyone, responsible beyond her years. She joined the debate team in 10th grade and quickly became captain. I would drive her to competitions across the state, listening to her practice her arguments in the passenger seat. Her teachers praised her analytical mind and work ethic, qualities I had tried to instill in her from a young age. When college acceptance letters started arriving, I wasn't surprised that Amanda had her pick of schools. She eventually chose Westfield University, a prestigious school about 3 hours from our home. They offered a partial scholarship, but the remaining costs were substantial. Without hesitation, I sold an investment property I had been holding onto for my retirement to cover the difference. Seeing Amanda pursue her dreams was worth any sacrifice. "Dad, you shouldn't have," she protested when I told her what I had done. "Your education is the best investment I could ever make," I assured her. "Your mother would have wanted this for you." The first year of college went smoothly. Amanda came home most weekends, eager to share stories about her classes and new friends. We maintained our fishing trips when weather permitted, though now our conversations had evolved to include philosophy, politics, and her plans for the future. She talked about becoming a corporate lawyer, and I could already see her succeeding in that path. The changes began subtly during her sophomore year. The weekend visits became less frequent. Her calls grew shorter, often ending with requests for extra money beyond what we had budgeted. When she did come home, she seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone. The warm, open conversations we once shared were replaced by brief, superficial exchanges. "Is everything okay at school?" I would ask. "Fine, Dad. Just busy with studying," became her standard response, though her grades had started to slip according to the reports the university sent home. I noticed changes in her appearance too. The practical, studious Amanda, who once laughed at designer labels, was suddenly wearing expensive clothes and jewelry that I knew she couldn't afford on the allowance I provided. When I carefully broached the subject, she became defensive. "I have a job now, Dad. I can spend my money how I want," she snapped during one particularly tense dinner. But when I asked about this job, the details were vague and inconsistent. I told myself this was normal. College was a time for finding oneself, for making mistakes and learning from them. Margaret and I had always agreed that we wanted to raise a daughter who could think independently. Perhaps this was just Amanda asserting her autonomy, a necessary step in growing up. I wanted to trust her, to believe she would find her way back to the values we had instilled in her. Still, as the calls home became increasingly rare and almost exclusively focused on requests for money, I couldn't shake the feeling that something more concerning was happening. Yet I continued to send the funds she asked for, hoping each time that this would be the support she needed to get back on track. In my heart, I believed my little girl was still there, just navigating the complicated path to adulthood in her own way. Everything changed during Amanda's junior year spring break. She called to say she was bringing someone home, a special someone. I was thrilled. After nearly 6 months of minimal contact, I would finally get to see my daughter and meet the person who had captured her attention. I spent the entire week before their arrival preparing the house. I repainted her bedroom, stocked the fridge with all her favorite foods, and even bought a new grill for a welcome home barbecue. I wanted everything to be perfect. When they finally pulled into the driveway in a sleek black sports car I knew Amanda couldn't afford, I felt a knot form in my stomach. The man who emerged was nothing like I had imagined. Jackson Matthews was 32 years old, a full decade older than my 22-year-old daughter. He wore an expensive suit that seemed out of place for a casual visit to a small town, and his smile never quite reached his eyes as he shook my hand with an overly firm grip. "Mr. Wilson, pleasure to meet you. Amanda has told me so much about you," he said smoothly, his voice carrying a practiced charm that immediately put me on edge. "Please call me Garrett," I replied, trying to keep an open mind despite my initial impression. "Any friend of Amanda's is welcome here." That first dinner was tense. Jackson dominated the conversation, talking at length about his various business ventures and connections to people whose names he seemed to think should impress me. When I asked specific questions about what exactly he did for a living, his answers were vague. "I'm an investor primarily. I spot opportunities others miss," he said, cutting into the steak I had carefully grilled to Amanda's usual preference of medium rare, though she had barely touched her plate. "I've been mentoring Amanda on financial independence. She has a natural talent for it." Amanda beamed at him with an adoration that made my heart sink. This wasn't the look of young love I had seen in Margaret's eyes when we first met. This was something different, something closer to worship. Later that night, I heard movement downstairs and went to investigate, thinking Amanda might be having a late-night snack like she used to during her high school exam periods. Instead, I found Jackson in my home office rifling through the drawers of my desk. He straightened quickly when he saw me flashing that same hollow smile. "Just looking for a pen to write down a thought I had about the stock market," he explained, though I noticed my drawer with financial documents was slightly ajar. "Amanda mentioned you keep them in here." I provided him with a pen and watched as he scribbled something meaningless on a notepad before heading back upstairs. I checked my files after he left, and while nothing appeared to be missing, the encounter left me deeply unsettled. Over the next few days, Jackson made frequent comments about the value of my house, asking pointed questions about the mortgage, property taxes, and recent sales in the neighborhood. He admired my car, a well-maintained Lincoln Continental, that had been my splurge after a particularly successful year in real estate, and inquired about its value and title status. He even took an unusual interest in several antique pieces I had inherited from my grandfather, suggesting he knew a guy who could appraise them. The breaking point came when I returned early from grocery shopping and found Jackson photographing documents in my filing cabinet. This time, there was no plausible explanation. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I demanded, setting down the grocery bags. Before Jackson could respond, Amanda rushed into the room. "Dad, why are you being so hostile?" Jackson was just helping me locate some of my childhood documents I need for a university project. "In my financial files," I asked, holding up a folder clearly labeled investment properties that had been left open on my desk. "You're being paranoid." Amanda snapped, a coldness in her voice I had never heard before. "This is why I never bring anyone home. You always find a way to ruin things because you can't stand the thought of me being happy with someone else." "Amanda, that's not fair," I began, but she was already storming out, Jackson following behind with a look of fabricated sympathy thrown my way. That night, I did what I should have done immediately. I searched for information about Jackson Matthews online. What I found confirmed my worst fears. He had a record of fraud charges in 2 states, though the cases had been settled out of court. Several small claims, filings against him, painted a picture of someone who borrowed money and never repaid it. Most disturbingly, I found a pattern: he seemed to target women with significant assets or inheritance prospects. When I tried to show Amanda the evidence the next morning, she refused to even look at the printouts I had made. "Those are old misunderstandings that were resolved," she insisted. "Jackson told me about his past mistakes. He's changed. And the fact that you would go behind my back to dig up dirt on him just shows you don't respect me as an adult." I respect you enough to worry when I see red flags, I countered. Please just take a look at what I found. We're leaving, she announced instead. Jackson and I are going to get our own place. I can't stay here with someone who doesn't support my choices. My heart broke as she packed her bags, barely speaking to me. Before they left, I tried one last time to reach her. Amanda, please just be careful. I love you too much to see you hurt, I said, holding out an envelope containing $10,000. If you're determined to move out, at least take this for a security deposit and first month's rent. Somewhere safe. She took the money without meeting my eyes, and they were gone within the hour. Over the next few months, our communication dwindled to occasional texts and brief phone calls, usually initiated by me. Each time, Amanda sounded more distant, more defensive. When I asked to visit their new apartment, there was always an excuse why now wasn't a good time. I sent birthday and holiday gifts that were acknowledged with short thank you texts that felt like they might have been prompted rather than sincere. I tried to maintain hope that Amanda would eventually see through Jackson, but with each passing month she seemed to drift further away from the daughter I had raised. Still, I left her bedroom untouched and kept our fishing gear ready, holding on to the belief that someday she would find her way back home. The chest pains started about 7 months after Amanda moved out. At first, I dismissed them as heartburn or stress. Running a business alone while worrying about my only child had taken its toll. But when I nearly collapsed while showing a property to clients, I could no longer ignore the warning signs. The diagnosis came quickly and hit hard, severe coronary artery disease requiring bypass surgery. The doctor spoke in measured tones about blockages, surgical options, and recovery timelines, but all I could think about was Amanda. If something happened to me, what would become of her? More specifically, what would Jackson do with my assets if I wasn't around to protect them? Mr. Wilson, given the severity of your condition, we should schedule surgery as soon as possible, the cardiologist explained. Do you have family who can support you through this process? I nodded automatically, though in truth I wasn't sure anymore. I tried calling Amanda that evening to share the news, but my call went straight to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound casual, asking her to call me back about an important health matter. The next day I tried again, and the next. After a week of unreturned calls, I sent a text explicitly stating I needed heart surgery and would like to see her before the procedure. No response. With surgery scheduled for the following month and no word from my daughter, I made an appointment with Frank Donnelly, my attorney and friend of 30 years. If I couldn't count on family support, I needed to ensure my affairs were in order. Frank's office hadn't changed much over the decades. The same leather chairs, the same diplomas on the wall, the same smell of coffee and old books. It was comforting in its familiarity, a stark contrast to how unrecognizable my relationship with my daughter had become. Garrett, good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances, Frank said, gesturing for me to sit. How are you holding up? As well as can be expected, I replied, settling into the chair. The doctors say the surgery has a high success rate, but there are always risks. That's why I'm here. I explained the situation with Amanda and Jackson, sharing what I had discovered about the man who seemed to have such influence over my daughter. Frank's expression grew increasingly troubled as I spoke. Garrett, I've seen this scenario play out before, and it rarely ends well. This Jackson character has clearly identified you as a potential source of funds with Amanda as his access point. Have there been any direct attempts to get money from you? I shook my head. Not yet, beyond Amanda's increased requests for loans that never get repaid. But Jackson has shown unusual interest in my assets. I'm worried about what might happen if I'm incapacitated after surgery, or if things don't go as planned. Let's make sure your will is updated first of all, Frank said, pulling out my file. But given what you've told me, I have another suggestion that might better protect your assets, and ultimately, Amanda herself. Frank proposed creating a living trust that would hold all my assets with specific conditions for their management and distribution. While I would remain the trustee while alive and competent, the trust would include provisions to protect the assets from potential exploitation. Your house is worth about $780,000 in the current market, and it's fully paid off, Frank noted, reviewing my financial statement. That alone would be a tempting target for someone like Jackson. Plus, your investment portfolio, retirement accounts, and the business. Altogether, It's a substantial estate that needs protection. We spent the next few hours crafting the trust agreement. Under its terms, Amanda would eventually inherit everything, but the assets would be managed by a trustee of my choosing if I became incapacitated or passed away. Additionally, there were safeguards against coercion or manipulation that might lead to hasty liquidation of assets. "What about power of attorney for healthcare decisions?" Frank asked as we finished the trust paperwork. I hesitated, the reality of my situation striking me anew. Normally, this would go to Amanda without question. Now I found myself naming Frank instead. Before I left his office, I wrote a letter to Amanda explaining what I had done and why. I poured my heart into those pages, making it clear that every decision was motivated by love and concern for her future. Frank promised to keep it in his safe to be delivered to Amanda if necessary. The day before my scheduled hospital admission, I made one final attempt to reach my daughter. This time, miraculously, she answered. "Dad." Her voice sounded strange, guarded. "Amanda, sweetheart, I'm so glad I caught you. I've been trying to reach you because I'm going into the hospital tomorrow for heart surgery. I was hoping I might see you before." "Oh." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry to hear that, but Jackson and I are really busy right now with some investments. I'm not sure we can make it." The coldness in her voice cut deeper than any scalpel could. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "I just wanted you to know in case. Well, just in case." "You'll be fine," she said dismissively. "Look, I have to go. Jackson needs the phone. Good luck with your surgery." The line went dead, and I sat in my empty house feeling more alone than I had since Margaret died. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove myself to the hospital. The nurses seemed surprised that I had no family member to assist me, but they were kind and efficient as they prepared me for a 5-day pre-surgery stay to stabilize and monitor my condition. My roommate was Walter Jenkins, a 75-year-old retired postal worker with a dry sense of humor and an endless supply of stories about the strange things he had delivered over his 40-year career. Despite my situation, he managed to make me laugh, a welcome distraction from my thoughts. Susan, the night shift nurse, became another unexpected source of comfort. She would check on me during her rounds and often stay for a few extra minutes of conversation. When she learned about my estrangement from Amanda, she shared that she had experienced something similar with her own son years ago. "He came back eventually," she told me one night while checking my vitals. "Sometimes they need to learn the hard way who really cares about them." 3 days into my hospital stay, I received a call from Barbara, my neighbor of 20 years. Her voice was hesitant, concerned. "Garrett, I thought you should know. Your daughter was at your house today with that man she's been seeing and someone who looked like a real estate agent. They were walking around the property taking pictures. When I asked what was happening, Amanda said you were selling the house and had asked her to handle the arrangements while you were in the hospital. Is that right?" My blood ran cold. "No, Barbara, that's not right at all. I'm not selling my house." "I didn't think so," she said quietly. The way that man was pointing at features of the house, talking about renovations and value, it didn't seem like something you'd have authorized. "Should I call the police?" "No," I decided after a moment's thought. "But thank you for letting me know. I'll handle it from here." I hung up and immediately called Frank, who promised to send a formal cease and desist letter to any real estate agencies in the area, making it clear the property was not for sale. We both knew what was happening, but part of me still couldn't believe Amanda would go this far. I spent a restless night wondering how my daughter and I had reached this point. Had I failed her somehow? Had my grief over losing Margaret blinded me to problems in how I raised Amanda? Or was this simply the toxic influence of a manipulative man who had identified her as a path to my assets? Whatever the case, I knew I needed to be prepared for what might come next. Jackson wouldn't give up easily now that he had committed to this course of action, and based on Barbara's call, it seemed likely I would be hearing from Amanda very soon. The call came at 9:30 that evening. I was watching an old Western with Walter, both of us pretending to be interested in the plot while actually lost in our own thoughts. When my phone rang and I saw Amanda's name on the screen, Walter tactfully turned up the television volume and focused intently on the screen to give me privacy. "Hello, Amanda," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral despite the anger and hurt swirling inside me. "Dad," her voice was unnaturally bright, words tumbling out in a rush. I have amazing news. Jackson and I are getting married tomorrow. Just a small ceremony at the courthouse, nothing fancy. We decided there was no point in waiting. Before I could respond, she continued, barely pausing for breath. And I wanted to let you know that we sold the house and your car. The house went for $700,000, which is a great price in this market. And we got $35,000 for the Continental. The new owners will take possession next week, so you'll need to move your things out when you leave the hospital. The casual way she announced selling my home and car without any authority to do so was stunning. I took a deep breath, acutely aware of my heart condition and the monitors tracking my vital signs. I see, I said carefully. And where do you expect me to live after my heart surgery? There was a slight hesitation. Well, we thought you might want to move into a retirement community. They have medical staff and activities. Jackson says it would be much better for someone in your condition. We can use some of the money from the house for that. Some of the money, I echoed. What happens to the rest? We're buying a place in Arizona, she replied, an edge of defensiveness entering her voice. Jackson has some great business connections there. This is a really good opportunity for us, Dad. I let the silence stretch for a moment, gathering my thoughts. Amanda, did you bring the buyers to the house? Show them around? Of course. They love it. The husband is especially interested in your workshop in the garage. And the paperwork. Did you sign anything on my behalf? I asked, keeping my tone conversational. Jackson handled most of that, she admitted. He has experience in real estate. The buyers already gave us a deposit. I see, I said again. Well, congratulations on your upcoming wedding. But there's just one thing you left out. What do you mean? She sounded confused, exactly as I had anticipated. I couldn't help but laugh then. A genuine laugh that probably sounded concerning to anyone who didn't understand the context. The house isn't actually sellable by you or Jackson. Neither is the car. I'm afraid your buyers are going to be very disappointed. What are you talking about? Amanda demanded. I could hear muffled voices in the background, presumably Jackson asking what was happening. About 2 months ago, I transferred all my assets into a living trust, I explained calmly. The house, the car, my investments, everything. They're not in my name anymore, and they certainly aren't in yours. Any sale would need to be approved by the trustee, which is currently me, and eventually will be Frank Donnelly if something happens to me. The silence on the other end was profound. Then I heard rustling sounds as if the phone was being grabbed. Listen here. Old man Jackson's voice came through, hard and angry, all pretense of charm gone. You can't do this to us. We already have buyers lined up. We took their money. That sounds like a problem you created, I replied, feeling oddly calm now that the cards were on the table. Any money you took was done fraudulently, since you had no authority to sell property you don't own. We'll sue you, he threatened. Amanda is your next of kin. She has rights. By all means, consult an attorney, I suggested. They'll tell you the same thing Frank told me. A properly established living trust is quite secure against exactly the kind of situation we're experiencing right now. Jackson's true colors fully emerged, then his voice dropping to a vicious hiss. You think you're so clever, but there are ways around this. Amanda will contest it after you're gone. And who knows, with your heart condition, that might be sooner than you think. The threat was clear, and despite everything, I felt a surge of worry for my daughter. What kind of man had she attached herself to? I'd like to speak to Amanda again, I requested firmly. She doesn't want to talk to you, Jackson snapped. Amanda, I called out, hoping she could hear me. If you're there, please know that everything I've done is to protect you, not to control you. The trust isn't about keeping things from you. It's about making sure no one can take advantage of you or pressure you into decisions you might regret. I heard a scuffle in the background, and then Amanda's voice returned thick with emotion. How could you do this, Dad? You've ruined everything. Jackson says people already paid us deposits. What are we supposed to do now? Return the money you took under false pretenses, I suggested. And Amanda, please think carefully about tomorrow. Marriage is a serious commitment, especially to someone who appears more interested in my assets than your well-being. You don't know anything about him, she shot back, though I detected a note of uncertainty beneath her anger. He loves me. He's the only one who supports my dreams. What dreams are those, Amanda? Because the daughter I raised dreamed of finishing her education, of making a difference in the world. not of selling her father's house out from under him while he's in the hospital. There was a long pause, and I heard Jackson's voice in the background, though I couldn't make out his words. "I have to go," Amanda finally said. "Jackson says we need to figure out what to do about this mess you created." "I love you, Amanda," I told her. "That hasn't changed. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be here." The line went dead. I set the phone down and realized Walter had muted the television entirely and was watching me with concern. "Family trouble?" he asked, simply. You could say that I confirmed with a weary sigh. My daughter and her boyfriend tried to sell my house without my knowledge or permission. They're not happy to discover it isn't possible. Walter shook his head. Young people these days. My granddaughter went through something similar. Got involved with a smooth talker who nearly cleaned out her bank account before she came to her senses. He paused, studying me. "You okay? Your color doesn't look good." I wasn't okay. My heart was racing, and I felt lightheaded. I pressed the call button for the nurse, suddenly aware of the strain this confrontation had put on my already compromised health. Susan arrived quickly, frowning at the monitors. "Blood pressure's elevated, Mr. Wilson. What's got you worked up?" "Just a difficult phone call," I explained as she adjusted my medication. "Family," she guessed with the intuition of a veteran nurse. I nodded, and she patted my hand. "Try to rest. You need to be strong for your surgery. Whatever it is, it'll still be there to deal with afterward." She was right, of course. But as I tried to settle back against the pillows, I couldn't help wondering if Amanda would still be in my life after all this was resolved, and whether my efforts to protect her would ultimately push her further away or finally open her eyes to the man she was planning to marry. I expected to have at least a day to process everything before any further confrontation. I was wrong. At 8:15 the next morning, as I was picking at a bland hospital breakfast, Amanda appeared in the doorway of my room. Jackson stood behind her, his face set in what I assumed was meant to be an intimidating expression. Walter took one look at the situation, mumbled something about finding coffee, and made a strategic exit, closing the door behind him. I silently thanked him for his discretion. "Dad," Amanda began, her voice strained. She looked terrible with dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she hadn't slept. She wore an outfit I didn't recognize, something flashy and inappropriate for a hospital visit. Another of Jackson's influences, I suspected. "Amanda," I replied, setting aside my breakfast tray. "I didn't expect to see you today. Isn't this your wedding day?" She flinched slightly. "We postponed it to deal with this situation you created." "The situation where you attempted to sell property that wasn't yours to sell," I clarified. "That seems like a problem of your creation, not mine." Jackson stepped forward then, no longer trying to maintain the charming facade he'd worn during our previous interactions. "Cut the crap, old man. We know what you did with that trust was just a spiteful move to control Amanda. You need to undo it now." I regarded him calmly. "Good morning to you too, Jackson. I'm afraid that won't be possible." "You don't understand," Amanda interjected, wringing her hands. "We're in trouble. People gave us money based on the sale. $50,000 in deposits. That you had no authority to accept," I pointed out. "Did you actually tell these people you own the house, Amanda? Or did Jackson handle those conversations?" She looked away, confirming my suspicion. Jackson had likely done the talking, perhaps even implying that Amanda already owned the property or had power of attorney. "It doesn't matter who said what," Jackson snapped. "The fact is, we need to complete these sales. You're just being stubborn because you don't approve of me." "My disapproval of you is entirely based on your actions," I replied evenly. "Like trying to sell my home while I'm in the hospital awaiting heart surgery, or isolating my daughter from her only living parent, or your history of fraud in multiple states that you thought I wouldn't discover." Amanda's head snapped up at this last point. "What is he talking about, Jackson?" Jackson waved dismissively. "Ancient history. Misunderstandings that were resolved years ago. Your father is just trying to drive a wedge between us." I reached for the folder on my bedside table, the one Frank had delivered yesterday after I called him about Barbara's revelations. "Would you like to see the court records, Amanda? The complaints filed by Patricia Denton in Oregon, or Elizabeth Garvey in Nevada. Both women in their 20s with recently deceased parents and significant inheritances, both of whom met a charming investor named Jackson Matthews who promised to help grow their money. Don't listen to him, Jackson said sharply, attempting to pull Amanda toward the door. He's manipulating you. But Amanda stood her ground, looking between Jackson and the folder in my hand. Something was shifting in her expression, doubt beginning to crack through the facade of certainty she had been maintaining. What happened to those women? She asked quietly. They lost everything, I answered honestly. Jackson convinced them to liquidate their inheritances for investment opportunities that never materialized. By the time they realized what was happening, the money was gone. They filed charges, but Jackson had covered his tracks well enough that he was able to settle out of court for pennies on the dollar. Then he moved on to the next target. That's not true, Jackson insisted, but his denial lacked conviction. Amanda, we need to go. Now. The trust I established, I continued, keeping my focus on my daughter, ensures that your inheritance is protected, not just from Jackson, but from anyone who might attempt to take advantage of you. It doesn't prevent you from benefiting from what I've built over my lifetime. It just creates a structure that makes it harder for someone to pressure you into hasty decisions that aren't in your best interest. So controlling Jackson muttered, but I could see he was becoming desperate. Amanda, are you really going to let your father dictate your life like this? Tell you who you can love, how you can spend your money? Is it about the money, Jackson? I asked directly. If Amanda had no inheritance coming, would you still want to marry her tomorrow? Of course I would, he replied automatically, but his eyes shifted away. Then prove it, I challenged. Walk away from any claim on my assets. Agree that anything I leave to Amanda remains solely in her name, protected by a prenuptial agreement. If your intentions are pure, that shouldn't be a problem. The mask slipped then, just for a moment, but it was enough. Amanda saw it too, the calculation in his eyes, the flash of anger quickly suppressed. This is ridiculous, Jackson said, recovering. I don't have to prove anything to you. Amanda and I are getting married with or without your blessing. And once we're married, we'll find a way to break that trust. There are always loopholes. Not in this case, I said confidently, though in truth I knew that determined legal action could potentially challenge even a well-constructed trust. Frank was very thorough. Jackson's patience finally snapped. You think you're so smart, don't you? A washed-up old real estate agent who thinks he knows everything. Well, guess what? Amanda doesn't need you anymore. She has me now, and after we're married, you'll never see her again. He grabbed Amanda's arm roughly. Let's go. We're wasting time here. Something changed in Amanda's posture then. She pulled her arm free from Jackson's grip and took a step away from him. Don't touch me like that. Amanda, he growled. We're leaving. Now. I want to see what's in that folder, she said, her voice gaining strength. I want to know if what my father is saying is true. It's all lies, Jackson insisted, reaching for her again. Your father will say anything to keep us apart. As Jackson moved toward Amanda, the door opened, and Susan walked in, clipboard in hand. She assessed the situation in an instant, years of nursing experience giving her a sixth sense for tension and potential danger. Everything all right in here, Mr. Wilson, she asked, positioning herself subtly between Jackson and Amanda. We're having a family discussion, Jackson said tersely. A private one. Susan smiled pleasantly but didn't budge. I'm afraid I need to check Mr. Wilson's vitals. His surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, and we need to ensure he's stable. Perhaps you could continue your discussion later. We're not finished, Jackson insisted, his face flushing with anger. Actually, Amanda said quietly, I think we are. For now, at least. She turned to me. Dad, can I come back later? Alone. The hope that surged through me was almost painful. Of course, sweetheart. Anytime. Jackson's expression darkened. Amanda, if you stay here with him, we're through. I mean it. No more chances. Amanda looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him perhaps for the first time, seeing beyond the charm to the manipulation beneath. Is that supposed to be a threat or a promise, Jackson? His face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. After everything I've done for you, you think you can just walk away. Susan stepped forward, her pleasant demeanor gone. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a hospital, and Mr. Wilson is a cardiac patient. If you continue to create a disturbance, I'll be forced to call security. Jackson looked around the room, realizing he had lost control of the situation. With a final venomous glare at me, he spat out. This isn't over, old man. Not by a long shot. Then he stormed out, nearly colliding with an orderly in the hallway. In the silence that followed, Amanda seemed to deflate, sinking into the chair beside my bed. Susan checked my monitors, frowning at the elevated readings. "I'll give you two some time," she said kindly, "but please try to keep things calm. Your father needs rest before tomorrow." After she left, Amanda and I sat in silence for several moments. Finally, she looked up, her eyes filled with a confusion and pain that broke my heart. "Is it all true?" she asked. "About the other women?" I handed her the folder. "See for yourself." Frank gathered everything he could find. As she read through the documents, I watched the last of her defenses crumble. The woman before me was suddenly my daughter again, vulnerable and hurt, but with the spark of intelligence and integrity I had always known was there. "I've been so stupid," she whispered, closing the folder. "He made me believe. He said you were controlling, that you didn't want me to be independent, that the only way I could truly grow up was to break away from your influence." "Classic isolation technique," I said gently. "It's not stupidity, Amanda. Even intelligent, strong people can be manipulated under the right circumstances." She wiped away a tear. "What am I going to do about the deposits? Those people are expecting to buy the house and car." "We'll figure it out," I promised. "Frank can help. The important thing is that you're safe now." Amanda looked toward the door where Jackson had exited. "I don't know if I am. He was so angry. I've never seen him like that before." I reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "We'll deal with that too. Together." She squeezed my fingers, then gestured to the monitors, tracking my heart. "I'm sorry for adding to your stress before surgery. I should go and let you rest." "Will you come back?" I asked, unable to keep the fear from my voice. I had just gotten her back. I couldn't bear to lose her again. Amanda nodded, a faint smile forming through her tears. "Try and stop me. Someone needs to be here when you wake up tomorrow." As she stood to leave, I felt a weight lift from my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. Whatever happened with the surgery, I knew now that Amanda would be all right. She was finding her way back to herself, to the strong, intelligent young woman I had raised. "I love you, Dad," she said from the doorway. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I love you too, sweetheart. Always have, always will." After she left, Walter returned, settling back into his bed with studied nonchalance. "Everything okay now?" he asked, picking up the remote. I smiled, feeling truly optimistic for the first time in months. "Not yet, but I think it will be." Amanda returned that evening, as promised, carrying a small duffel bag and wearing a much more subdued outfit than earlier, something closer to the practical style I remembered. She had made an effort to freshen up, but the emotional exhaustion was still evident in her posture and the redness around her eyes. "I got a hotel room nearby," she explained, setting her bag down. "I went back to Jackson's apartment to get some of my things while he was out. I didn't take much, just what I absolutely needed." "Are you worried about how he'll react?" I asked, concern sharpening my voice. She nodded, sinking into the visitor's chair. "He left about 20 voicemails on my phone. Started out apologetic, saying we could work things out, that he still wanted to marry me. But the later ones," she shuddered. "He was so angry, Dad. Threatening to sue me for his share of the deposits from the house sale, saying I'd regret crossing him." "Did you keep the messages?" I asked, already thinking about restraining orders and legal protection. "Yes, and I sent copies to my email just in case." She managed a small, sad smile. "I'm not completely naive, it turns out." "You never were," I assured her. "Just trusting. There's a difference." A nurse I hadn't seen before came in to check my vitals efficiently, noting readings and adjusting my IV. After she left, Amanda moved her chair closer to my bed. "I want to understand everything," she said, her voice steadier now. "About Jackson, about the trust, about what happens next." Over the next hour, I told her everything I had discovered about Jackson Matthews, including details that hadn't made it into Frank's folder. How I'd hired a private investigator who found a pattern going back nearly a decade. How Jackson had refined his approach over time, becoming more sophisticated in how he identified and isolated potential targets. "He looks for people with assets, but emotional vulnerabilities," I explained. His previous targets were young women who had recently lost parents, making them susceptible to someone who offered support and understanding during grief. In my case, he saw someone who was drifting from her father and could be pulled further away. Amanda finished, the realization dawning in her eyes. The more he convinced me you were controlling me, the more I pulled away and the more dependent I became on him. It was so gradual I didn't even notice. That's how it works, I said gently. And it's not just financial control, he established. It was emotional and social too, wasn't it? Amanda looked down at her hands. He monitored my phone, said it was because he worried about me, but really it was to check who I was talking to. He had explanations for why my friends from before weren't good for me anymore. He even picked out my clothes, said he was helping me look more professional for the business world. The anger I felt toward Jackson threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it down. What Amanda needed now wasn't my rage, but my steady support. The financial aspect started small too, she continued, the words coming faster now as connections formed. First it was suggesting I ask you for a little extra money for networking events that never actually happened. Then it was convincing me to let him manage my student account. Before I knew it, I had no idea how much money I had or where it was going. He said he was teaching me about investing, but he never actually showed me anything. Financial abuse often accompanies emotional manipulation, I told her. It's another form of control. Amanda wiped away fresh tears. How did I not see it? I'm supposed to be smart. You raised me to be independent. Love can blind any of us, I said softly. And manipulation like this isn't about intelligence. It's about exploiting trust and emotional needs. Jackson was filling a void, offering something you felt was missing. She nodded slowly. After Mom died, I always worried about losing you too. Jackson somehow tapped into that fear and twisted it, making me think I needed to break away from you before you left me. The insight surprised me with its clarity. Your mother would be proud of your perception, I told her. She always said you had emotional intelligence beyond your years. A small smile touched Amanda's lips at the mention of Margaret. I miss her. I wish she could have warned me about men like Jackson. In a way she did, I reminded her. All those conversations about self-respect and healthy relationships. The seeds were there. That's why you're sitting here now, having figured it out before it was too late. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, both lost in thoughts of Margaret and what she would make of our current situation. Finally, Amanda spoke again. Tell me about the trust, the real reason you created it. I shifted to a more comfortable position in the hospital bed. When I was diagnosed and couldn't reach you, I started thinking about what would happen to my estate if something went wrong during surgery. The house, the business, the investments I'd built over 40 years. Would it all go to Jackson through you? Would he pressure you to liquidate everything immediately? He would have, Amanda acknowledged. He was already making plans for how we'd invest my inheritance once it came through. The trust ensures that doesn't happen, I explained. It's structured so that you're the beneficiary, but the assets are protected from pressure or manipulation. If something happens to me, Frank becomes the trustee. Major decisions about selling property or accessing large sums would require his approval until you reach certain milestones. What kind of milestones? She asked. Completing your education was one, I admitted. Not because I want to control you, but because I know how important that goal was to you before Jackson came along. There are also time buffers built in to prevent hasty decisions during periods of grief. Amanda considered this. So it's not about not trusting me. It's about creating safety nets. Exactly, I said, relieved she understood. The trust doesn't keep anything from you that's rightfully yours. It just ensures that no one, not Jackson or anyone else, can rush you into decisions you might regret. She reached for my hand again. Thank you for protecting me even when I thought I didn't need protection. I squeezed her fingers gently. That's what parents do, even when our children are adults. As evening deepened into night, our conversation shifted to the surgery scheduled for the next morning. Susan had explained the procedure to both of us, a triple bypass that would take several hours. The prognosis was good, but as with any major surgery, there were risks. I'm scared, I admitted, something I might not have said before today's reconciliation. Not just of the procedure itself, but of leaving you to deal with all this alone if something goes wrong. Don't think like that, Amanda insisted. The doctors say you're strong and the surgery has a high success rate. Still, I want you to know something. I reached for the drawer in the bedside table and pulled out a small key. This opens the bottom drawer of my desk at home. Inside is a letter I wrote to you when I created the trust. It explains everything in detail, including my hopes for your future. Amanda took the key, closing her fingers around it. I'll read it after your successful surgery when we're both home, and you can answer any questions I have about it. Deal, I agreed, allowing her optimism to bolster my own. As visiting hours came to a close, Amanda refused to leave. I'm staying, she declared when Susan came to gently suggest it was time to go. I'll sleep in the chair if I have to, but I'm not leaving my dad alone tonight. Susan exchanged a look with me, then nodded. I'll see about getting you a cot. Just this once, because it's the night before surgery. After she left, Amanda pulled her chair even closer and took out her phone. I have something I want to show you. She scrolled through her photos until she found what she was looking for, then handed me the device. On the screen was a picture I hadn't seen in years, one I thought might have been lost. Amanda, at 7 years old, sitting on my shoulders at Lake Millfield, both of us grinning widely, fishing rods in hand. I kept this, she said softly. Even when Jackson convinced me to delete most of my old photos, I couldn't let go of this one. It reminded me of who I really was, even when I was trying to be someone else. I felt tears prick my eyes as I studied the image, remembering that perfect day when we'd caught nothing, but had laughed for hours anyway. We'll make new memories like this, I promised, handing back the phone. Starting with a fishing trip as soon as I'm recovered. I'd liked that Amanda smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen from her in over a year. And Dad, I want to go back to school. Finish my degree. I was only a year away from graduating when I met Jackson. Nothing would make me happier, I told her truthfully. As the hospital quieted for the night, and Susan returned with a fold-out cot for Amanda, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for too long. Whatever the outcome of tomorrow's surgery, Amanda was finding her way back to herself. The path forward wouldn't be easy with Jackson's threats and the complications of the fraudulent house sale still to be addressed, but we would face those challenges together. That night, before drifting off to sleep, I showed Amanda the details of the trust on my tablet, pointing out how it could be modified now that circumstances had changed. As she began to truly understand the extent of the protection I had put in place, not to control her but to safeguard her future, the last of the walls between us seemed to crumble. I love you, Dad, she whispered as the lights dimmed. I'm so sorry I forgot that for a while. You never forgot, I assured her. You just got temporarily redirected. And now you're back on course. In the dim light of the hospital room, with my daughter nearby and surgery looming in the morning, I felt oddly content. Life had taken unexpected turns, bringing pain I hadn't anticipated, but also revealing strengths in both of us that might otherwise have remained untested. Whatever tomorrow brought tonight, we had reclaimed something precious that had nearly been lost. The steady beeping of monitors was the first thing I became aware of as I drifted back to consciousness. The second was Amanda's hand holding mine, her touch gentle but present. I struggled to open my eyes, fighting against the lingering effects of anesthesia. Dad, her voice reached me through the fog. Can you hear me? The surgery went well. You're in recovery. I managed to open my eyes at last, blinking against the harsh hospital lighting. Amanda's face swam into focus, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering concern. She looked exhausted but smiling. Water, I rasped, my throat painfully dry. She held a cup with a straw to my lips, and I took a small sip, the cool liquid bringing immediate relief. How long, I managed to ask. 6 hours, she replied. The surgeon said everything went as planned. 3 bypasses, all successful. You've been out for about 4 hours since then. I nodded slightly, still too groggy to fully process the information. The most important thing was that I was alive and Amanda was still here. The rest would come into focus with time. Over the next few days, as I gradually emerged from the post-surgical haze, Amanda remained a constant presence. She divided her time between my hospital room and dealing with the aftermath of Jackson's schemes. Frank had stepped in to help, sending formal notices to the would-be buyers of my house, explaining the situation and returning their deposits. Jackson himself had apparently fled town upon realizing his plans had collapsed. Amanda had filed a police report about his threats and financial manipulation, providing the saved voicemails as evidence. There was talk of possible charges related to the fraudulent property sale, though Frank warned us that such cases were often difficult to prove without clear documentation. 1 week after surgery, I was discharged with strict instructions for a 2-month recovery period. Amanda insisted on moving back into our house to help care for me, taking the same bedroom she had grown up in. The familiarity of the arrangement was comforting, though the circumstances were far from what either of us would have chosen. I spoke with the dean at Westfield today. Amanda announced over a dinner of heart-healthy soup she had prepared. They're willing to let me re-enroll for the fall semester. I'll need to retake a few classes, but I could have my degree by next spring. That's wonderful news, I said, genuinely thrilled. What about your living situation? Will you commute from here? She stirred her soup thoughtfully. I think I need to live on campus, actually. Not because I want to be away from you, she added quickly, seeing my expression, but because I need to rebuild my independence. Learn to trust my own judgment again without Jackson's influence, or... She hesitated. Or mine, I finished for her. She nodded, looking, relieved that I understood. I love you, Dad, and I'm so grateful for everything you've done. But I need to stand on my own 2 feet again. Figure out who I am after all this. I couldn't agree more, I told her sincerely, and the trust can help with that. Now that we're on the same page, we can modify it to better support your goals. 2 weeks into my recovery, Frank came to the house with updated trust documents. Amanda and I had discussed the changes we wanted to make, finding a balance that maintained protection while allowing for greater flexibility. The core protections remain in place, Frank explained, as we reviewed the papers. But now Amanda will have direct access to funds for education and living expenses without requiring trustee approval. And we've removed the completion of degree requirement, though I understand that's now a moot point. Amanda smiled at that. Yes, but I appreciate the vote of confidence in my decision-making. We've also added a provision regarding financial counseling, I pointed out. Not because I don't trust Amanda, but because we both agreed that professional guidance would be valuable after what happened. Frank nodded approvingly. Very sensible. And the house remains in the trust for now, I confirmed, with both Amanda and me as co-trustees. Any major decisions about the property will require mutual agreement. As Frank gathered the signed documents, he paused to look between us. You know, in 30 years of practice, I've seen many families torn apart by money and manipulation. It's refreshing to see one come back together stronger. After he left, Amanda and I sat on the back porch watching the sunset over the yard where she had once played as a child. The physical pain from my surgery was still present, a constant reminder of my mortality, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of peace. I got a call from Susan today, Amanda mentioned, sipping her tea. She wanted to check how you were doing. That was kind of her, I replied, touched by the nurse's continued concern. She also told me something interesting, Amanda continued. Apparently another patient came in last week, a woman about my age. She was asking questions about Jackson, showing his picture around. Turns out he tried the same scheme with her in another town, but she got suspicious when he started asking about her inheritance too soon after they met. I shook my head, unsurprised, but still disappointed in human nature. Some people never change. But some do, Amanda countered, giving me a meaningful look. I've been thinking a lot about how easily I fell for his manipulation. How quickly I turned against you, the one person who has always been there for me. Don't be too hard on yourself, I advised. Jackson is a professional con man. He's had years to perfect his techniques. Still, I should have seen through it, she insisted. The signs were all there. The isolation from friends and family. The controlling behavior disguised as concern. The focus on money and assets. Recognizing those patterns now is what matters, I said. It means you'll be able to spot them in the future, not just for yourself, but maybe for others too. As my recovery progressed, Amanda and I fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings were for medical appointments and physical therapy. Afternoons often found us sorting through old photographs or watching classic movies we had enjoyed together years ago. In the evenings, we would sit at the kitchen table, Amanda working on applications for scholarships and grants, while I reviewed property listings, gradually easing back into my real estate work on a part-time basis. 2 months after my surgery, as I was cleared to resume most normal activities, Amanda packed her bags for the fall semester at Westfield. The house felt emptier without her, but our daily phone calls and weekend visits maintained the connection we had rebuilt. On one such weekend visit, Amanda arrived with surprising news. They arrested Jackson, she announced, as she set her overnight bag down in the hallway. in Arizona of all places. Apparently he tried his scheme on the wrong woman this time, the daughter of a state judge. Justice catches up. Eventually I observed feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and pity. A man with Jackson's intelligence and charm could have built a legitimate life for himself if he had chosen a different path. As the seasons changed and Amanda thrived in her studies, I found myself reflecting often on the lessons of the past year. How easily love and trust could be weaponized by those with ill intent. How important it was to protect the people we care about, even when they resist that protection. And how resilience could emerge from the most painful experiences. One crisp autumn Saturday, Amanda came home for the weekend and suggested we tackle a project I had been putting off for years, replacing the weathered deck boards on the back porch. As we worked side by side measuring and cutting lumber, I was struck by the metaphor of what we were doing, rebuilding something solid and enduring from a foundation that remained strong despite the damage of time and circumstance. "You know what I realized recently," Amanda said as she hammered a nail into place. "When Jackson was pushing me to sell this house, he kept talking about its monetary value. $700,000, he said, but he never once mentioned what it's really worth." "And what's that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She gestured around us at the yard where she had learned to ride a bike, the kitchen window where Margaret had watched us build snowmen in winter, the marks on the doorframe tracking her growth from toddler to young woman. "This is where we became a family," she said simply, "where we grieved Mom together, where you taught me everything important about life. This house isn't just walls and a roof and property value. It's the physical space where love happened." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I'm glad we saved it," she continued, picking up another board, "not just from Jackson, but for what it represents. A place to come back to, a reminder of who we are and what matters." As the new deck took shape under our hands, I found myself filled with gratitude for second chances, for the opportunity to see my daughter reclaim her strength and independence, for the heart that continued to beat in my chest, allowing me to witness her journey. That evening, as we sat on our newly rebuilt deck watching the stars emerge, Amanda asked the question I had been expecting for some time. "Do you think I'll ever be able to trust someone again? Romantically, I mean." "Yes," I said without hesitation, "because the capacity for trust is too fundamental to who you are, to be permanently destroyed by one bad experience. You'll be more cautious, more aware of the warning signs, but someday you'll meet someone worthy of the trust you choose to place in them." She smiled, looking more at peace than I had seen her in a long time. "You know what Mom used to say about trust? That it's like a bridge." I recalled Margaret's wisdom as clear in my mind as if she had spoken the words yesterday. "You build it carefully, plank by plank, and even if someone burns it down, you still know how to build bridges." Amanda nodded. "I'm getting better at recognizing which bridges are worth building." As we sat together under the vast canopy of stars, I reflected on how close we had come to losing everything that mattered, not just material possessions, but the bond between father and daughter that no trust document could possibly protect. Yet here we were rebuilding that bond, day by day, conversation by conversation. The house my daughter had tried to sell out from under me had become a symbol of our reconnection, a physical space where healing could happen. And though the scars from my surgery would never fully fade, they served as a reminder of resilience of a heart that had been broken and mended stronger at the seams. What do you think about parents who create financial protections for their adult children? Is it controlling or an act of love? Have you ever had to protect someone from making a harmful decision, even when they resisted? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you in any way, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember that sometimes the people who seem to be standing in your way are actually trying to protect you from dangers you cannot yet see. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you wisdom in all your relationships.